Let me be clear from the very beginning, this is not one of those love stories that wraps itself in a neat little bow, where the girl gets the guy, the credits roll, and everybody lives happily ever after. Number what I am about to tell you is not fiction. It is not a romance novel. It is my life. My actual, unfiltered, sometimes glorious, sometimes heartbreaking, God what is happening life. And honestly, it starts less like a fairy tale and more like a Monday morning you didn't ask for. Let's begin there, actually. A Monday morning, my Monday morning, I woke up with a headache so aggressive, it felt personal. The kind that sits right behind your eyes and dares you to open them. I had earned this rest. I had planned this rest. This was my leave, a carefully scheduled, long overdue, absolutely non-negotiable stretch of days away from my laptop, my colleagues, and every single alert notification that had ever stolen 10 minutes from my peace. I had put it in the system, I had sent the emails. I had done everything right. And then my phone buzzed. Not once. Not twice. My boss, let's just call him what he was. Relentless, was calling like his life depended on it. Like I was the last person on Earth who could prevent some catastrophic collapse of civilization. Ring after ring after ring, vibrating across my nightstand, rattling against the wood like an accusation. I stared at the ceiling. I stared at the phone. I stared at the ceiling again. By the time I gathered the emotional energy to pick up the call, it had ended. Of course it had, because the universe has a sense of humor. I sat up in bed, head throbbing, and looked at the screen. A text message sat waiting. Security emergency. Major breach attempt on the Hartfield account. Need you in. Now, I want to tell you exactly what went through my mind in that moment, but this is a story I intend to tell in polite company, so I will simply say I expressed my feelings loudly, creatively, and thoroughly in the privacy of my apartment. First in my head, and then, because my head wasn't big enough to contain all of it, out loud too. I said things to that text message that would have made my mother faint. But here is the thing about being the person they call in a crisis. It means you are, in fact, the person they call in a crisis. And as infuriating as that is at 7 in the morning on your approved leave, it also means something. It means you matter. It means your skills are not optional. It means that when everything starts falling apart, your name is the one on everybody's lips. I am a cybersecurity specialist, an ethical hacker. I hold a bachelor's degree in computer science with a concentration in information security, a master's in artificial intelligence and machine learning, certifications in certified ethical hacking, SASH, CompTIA security, and CIS. 5 years of studying the dark corners of the digital world, so that companies like the one we were protecting, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that could not afford a single second of vulnerability, would never have to live in them. I was 27 years old, and I had outworked, outlearned, and outperformed people twice my age to sit in the chair I sat in. This leave was earned. And yet, here we were. So yes, I got up. I cursed my boss out one final, therapeutic time, and then I had my shower. It was cold. Aggressively cold. I didn't check the temperature because frankly the shock of it was enough, somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees outside, and my hot water had opinions about cooperating with me that morning. I stood under that ice-cold spray, jaw clenched, and told myself this was character building. Then came the next indignity of my morning. I had to find a ride. No car. This was one of those days I felt that particular sting of not yet having my own vehicle standing on the pavement. And I didn't have a car because I can't afford it. Actually, I can afford 10 if I wanted to, but I was scared of driving and never attempted writing a driving test. Cold air had the audacity to keep being cold. I made a mental note, not for the first time, that I was getting a car. Soon, very soon, the ride came. I went to work, and there he was. My boss standing at the very front of the building, just outside the entrance, looking like a man who had been waiting and was very satisfied to see that his waiting had worked. He spotted me stepping out of the ride, straightened slightly, and then without a word turned and walked inside, as if my arrival was merely the confirmation of something he had always known would happen. I took a breath. I walked in, and I got to work. The office was already humming. Colleagues I had not expected to see, some of them also on leave, also dragged back in, were at their desks, heads down, fingers moving. A few looked up when I came in, and we exchanged the particular silent solidarity of people who all knew exactly what they had sacrificed to be in that room. I gave a nod here, a quick good morning there, and then I sat down and opened my screen. It was bad. A sophisticated intrusion attempt had been identified on the Hartfield Group's infrastructure, one of our highest value clients, a corporation whose data, if compromised, would make international news. Whoever was behind this attack knew what they were doing. The breach attempt was layered, patient, and designed to look like noise. If our automated systems had been the only thing watching, it might have worked. But we were watching now for 6 hours. I barely moved from that chair. I tracked the intrusion vectors, mapped the attack patterns, coordinated with the team on containment protocols, and ran analysis after analysis trying to identify the source and close every door before anything slipped through. I forgot about my headache, I forgot about the cold shower, I forgot about my leave. There is something that happens when you are deep inside a problem like this. The rest of the world goes quiet, and it is just you and the code and the question of who is going to win. At some point, I glanced at my phone. 6 hours had passed, and we still weren't done, which meant we would be back tomorrow. I looked around the room, I saw the same quiet exhaustion on every face, and my boss who, to his credit, had not left the building once caught my eye from across the room and gave me a single nod. I went home, I slept, and I came back. There is a coffee shop I love. I have loved it for years with the kind of loyalty that some people reserve for family members. It is not fancy, it doesn't have a chandelier or a curated playlist or 15 types of oat milk. What it has is a staff that actually listens. When I say light cream, they give me light cream. When I say small sugar, it is small sugar. And after a lifetime of ordering coffee and receiving something that was technically coffee but was otherwise nothing I asked for, this felt like a small miracle. I was a regular. I was a devoted regular. So the morning of day 2, dragging myself back to work, now fully resigned to the fact that my leave was dead, I stopped at the coffee shop first. $6, well spent, every single time. That was when I noticed the man. He was older, not ancient, but older than me in the way that 40-something is older to someone who is 27. He was seated near the window, coffee already in hand, and he was smiling, not at his phone, not at a friend, not at anything in particular at me. I looked around me. There was no one else in the immediate vicinity that smile was directed toward. It was unmistakably meant for me. And it wasn't a creepy smile, exactly. It wasn't a leer or a smirk. It was warm and calm and slightly knowing. The kind of smile that makes you feel like the person wearing it knows something you don't. I did not like that. I got my coffee. I said nothing. I left. But he was there the next day too. Same spot, same warm, knowing smile, aimed directly at me like I was a familiar sight he'd been looking forward to. Now, you have to understand something about me. My mother is African, my father is American, and between the two of them, I got a very particular dual inheritance of worldviews. From my father, I got pragmatism and the belief that things are usually what they appear to be. From my mother, beautiful, formidable, deeply spiritual, and steeped in every African story ever told, I got something else entirely. And in that moment, standing with my $6 coffee and this stranger's inexplicable smile, my mother's voice arrived in my head, clear as a church bell. That man is a ritualist. He wants to use you. Somebody help this child, the blood of Jesus. I almost laughed. Almost. Because I am a woman of science, of technology, of evidence-based reasoning. I have a master's degree in artificial intelligence. I do not believe in ritual men lurking in American coffee shops. And yet, this is America, I told my mother's voice firmly as I got into my ride. These things don't really happen here. The voice did not seem convinced. I chose to ignore it, but I noticed him again on day 3 and day 4. Always there, always smiling. And it got under my skin in a way I couldn't fully explain, not because I was afraid, but because I am, at my core, someone who needs to understand things. Unexplained phenomena bother me. That smile was an unexplained phenomenon. I made a decision. The next time I saw him, I was going to say something. After all, if I was brave enough to sit for certification exams that most people fail on their first attempt, brave enough to hold my own in rooms where I was often the youngest, and the only woman brave enough to chase down digital intruders in the dead of the night, then surely I could walk up to one smiling old man and ask him what his problem was. I shelved the plan for later and went back to work. Because first, there was a multi-billion-dollar company to save. We fixed it. Day 2 of the crisis, we pulled it together, traced every thread of the attack, sealed every vulnerability, ran our verification protocols until the system came back clean. The Hartfield account was safe. My boss, who had the emotional range of a spreadsheet, actually said the words, "Well done," in my direction. High praise, I chose to receive it graciously. And then, finally, my leave was mine again. Real this time. I put my out of office on. I turned my notifications to silent. And I decided I was going on a proper vacation. Meanwhile, something funny was going on with my friends. My friends, bless them, had taken it upon themselves to become my personal matchmaking committee. Every few weeks a new candidate would appear. This one is perfect for you. This one is so handsome. This one has a great job, and every few weeks I found a reason not to go ahead with the person. Too proud, too obsessed with himself. Too uncommitted, I knew my type. I had always known my type and I refused to settle. I had earned the right to be specific. The man I had in mind, handsome in the way that is hard to look away from, not magazine polished, but genuinely, naturally, arrestingly good looking. Quietly confident, not arrogant. Successful, someone who had built something with his life. Young, I had a ceiling, and 37 was it. 30 to 35 was the sweet spot. I had prayed for this man, I had held his image in my mind like a blueprint, and then one afternoon, I don't remember exactly whether it was Walmart or Target. One of those large, slightly overwhelming stores where you go in for 3 things and come out with 12. I was heading for the exit when I saw him. He matched the blueprint almost exactly. Tall. Put together, the kind of face that made you rearrange your plans involuntarily. We made eye contact, one of those moments where the world gets a little quieter. His name is Daniel. He was warm and funny and sharp. And when I told him what I did for a living, he didn't half listen and immediately talk about himself. He absolutely listened. He asked questions. We exchanged numbers before I walked to the car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment and thought, we texted that evening, then we called. Then we talked so long into the night that at some point I realized it was 2 a.m. and I had a vacation to prepare for, and yet I did not want to hang up. We slept on the phone, one of those early relationship things that feels both silly and completely perfect. I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing and woke up to his voice saying good morning. He lived just a few streets away. He worked near my office too. So when I went back to work, it became a routine. Every morning he would pull up, I would get in, and he would drive me to my building. And every single time he dropped me off, he would lean over, press his lips to my forehead and say, "You are beautiful, have an amazing day, just as beautiful as you are." Every single time, without fail. The first time I blushed so hard I had to look out the window. By the 10th time, it still made me blush. My colleagues noticed. My best friend Tara started showing up at my apartment just to hear me talk about him, sitting cross-legged on my couch with her chin in her hand, watching me the way you watch. A good show. Surprise packages would arrive at my desk on random afternoons, not on birthdays or anniversaries. Just because, a book he thought I'd like. A coffee from my favorite shop. Once, an entire meal from a restaurant I'd mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. He remembered everything. 8 months in, over a quiet dinner, he looked at me across the table and said, "I'd like to give this a real name. I'd like you to be my girlfriend." I said yes, obviously, and I meant it with every part of myself. From beautiful, we went to amazing. We traveled. We argued about small things and talked through big ones. We built the kind of relationship that people see from the outside and quietly aspire to. There were hard conversations, misunderstandings. Days when the distance between two people feels wider than it should. But we always came back to each other. Always. He proposed on a rooftop. I am not going to give you every detail because some things belong only to the people who live them. What I will tell you is that I cried completely unself-conscious tears, and the diamond ring fit perfectly. And I said yes before he finished the sentence. The wedding was in Dubai. I had been very clear, not small, not overwhelmingly enormous, but undeniably beautiful. Something that looked the way our relationship felt. We flew our closest family and friends to the UAE, and we got married with the city skyline gleaming behind us and the warmth of everyone we loved surrounding us. My mother, my fierce, spiritual, deeply African mother, wore the most spectacular outfit anyone had ever seen, and she cried from the moment I walked out until well after the reception ended. My dad kept patting Daniel's shoulder and saying things like, "Good man, and she is something else, and you'll do fine, son." It was the most beautiful day of my life. I was certain of it. I have always wanted to be a mother, not because anyone told me I should, and not because it was expected, but because from the time I was old enough to imagine my future, there was always a child in it. My child, someone I would bring into the world and love so completely and so intentionally that they would never have to wonder. I had thought about it the way some people think about career goals, with vision and longing and a kind of quiet certainty. Daniel and I had talked about it before we married. He was open to it. 2 kids. We agreed. We were aligned. We started trying not long after the wedding, and the months went by. At first, there is nothing unusual about it taking time. I knew that. I was patient. I was a scientist, I understood biology, but patience can only carry you so far before it starts fraying at the edges. We went for our first round of tests. The results came back. We were both medically fit. Nothing structurally wrong. Keep trying. We kept trying. Then came a diagnosis, a hormonal imbalance affecting things in ways that wouldn't be immediately visible. Treatable, the doctor said, but it would take time. We started treatment, we adjusted our routines, we showed up to every appointment. But here is the thing I noticed, and once I noticed it, I couldn't unnotice it. Daniel was not worried. Not in the way I expected. He came to every appointment, he took every prescribed supplement. He did everything right, technically, But there was an absence in it, a kind of emotional flatness around the subject that I couldn't name but could feel every time I tried to talk to him about how I was doing. How afraid I was, how much I wanted this. Something felt off about the finances too, in the same quiet, unsettling way. Medical treatments are expensive, I knew that, but the bills seemed to escalate in ways I couldn't always account for. There were invoices that arrived in his name attached to my treatments for amounts I hadn't approved. Supplements, he said, were premium that cost 3-4 times what they should have. A specialist referral here, a private procedure there. All billed through accounts I didn't have full visibility into. I trusted him. He handled the logistics, he said, so I could focus on my health, so I let him later. Much later I would understand what that actually meant, but I am getting ahead of myself. Weeks became months, months bled into years, and in those 4 years I lost 5 pregnancies. 3 miscarriages. 2 stillbirths. I don't have language for what that is. I don't think language was built for it. There are losses that happen inside you that the outside world can't see or fully measure. And this was one of them. Each time I thought I'd found the flaw, and then the flaw gave way again. The stress was crushing. The doctors told me more than once that chronic stress, financial anxiety, and elevated cortisol levels were contributing factors to my miscarriages. Every time I tried to manage it, every time there was another bill, another amount I didn't expect, another quiet weight that pressed down on me in ways I didn't know how to name. I would later realize, with a grief that had no clean edges, that some of those weights were not accidents. I remember the afternoons I spent alone in our bedroom when Daniel was at work. The crying that had no shape to it, no clear beginning or end, just grief moving through me like weather. My best friend Tara would show up, she always showed up. I don't know how she always knew, and she would sit with me. Sometimes we talked, sometimes she just prayed quietly while I cried. She brought food I didn't eat and made me eat it anyway. She held my hand in a way that said, I am not going anywhere, without using a single word. I held on, I kept trying, I kept believing. But something in me had started asking a question I wasn't ready to ask out loud yet. I woke him up one night, shook him gently out of sleep because I needed an answer, and I needed it from him, not from the version of him that existed in the daylight where everything was managed and composed. Why aren't you worried? I asked. About us, about the babies. Why does it feel like this? Doesn't. Why aren't you scared? He blinked into the dark, turned to look at me. And he said, because I love you, whether or not we have children, you are enough for me. It was a beautiful answer, the kind of answer that, if you love someone, you want to hear, but it didn't land right. Something in me heard the words and simultaneously heard something underneath them, a silence in the shape of something unsaid. My instincts have served me well my entire career. I have built my professional life on the ability to sense when something doesn't add up, even when the surface looks clean, and my instincts, sitting in that dark bedroom, were screaming. I let it go, for a while, because I loved him. Because I wanted to be wrong. 3 days later, I found something I wasn't looking for. Something that shocked me to my bones. I will continue with the story in part 2. It's available in the channel now.